sweet love. It's the only thing that there's just too little love. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. No, not just for some, but for everyone.
For everyone.
Is love.
Oh, it's so beautiful to be here with you, Kylie. And it's so beautiful to start with that song, because I know that love is such a beautiful part of who you are and of what you do. And I just want to welcome you.
Thank you so much for having me, Jilly. It's such an honour to
Now
be
we've got...
here. And you're right, that song, sorry, is the internet doing its lovely thing today?
It's a little bit, but that's okay. I'll put my quartz crystal on it and we'll just pray. Pray to the internet fairies.
Yeah, so I was just saying that I truly believe that is what the world needs, is love, more love, less fear. Yeah. Let's share the love for sure.
Yeah, and parenting is like, it's become, it's interesting, isn't it? It's become like this really, really difficult thing for so many people, and there's so many books about parenting, and there's so many people telling us what to do. And you know, I feel like it's a little bit like nutrition and diet and stuff. We've moved away from our intrinsic kind of inner knowledge and inner knowing. And talk to us about what you do and what your kind of, you know, why you're so passionate about this. I'm just pulling a card as we're speaking, so yeah. Are you meditating or have you frozen?
Yes. Yeah, beautiful. Oh. So yeah, absolutely. Everyone's life is busy, busy, busy.
Yep. Oh. Oh, this is funny. Hang on, you're muted. You're muted.
I just threw an F-bomb in there too. Just
oh, did you? Oh, I didn't even hear that. The internet censorship gods were at play.
Oh, such fun.
I know, it's so much fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
Things don't go your way. So yeah, so you were saying. It's so busy. Life is so busy.
But hey, like this is a perfect example of parenting right here, right now.
Right. Okay, beautiful. I love it. When things don't go like we plan. When things don't go like we plan, we have to just adapt.
Changes.
I can't hear you. Oh, your internet's gone.
Mm-hmm. We go off track. Yeah, which is awesome.
I didn't hear any. Okay. Yeah. It disappeared.
Awesome. Oh, this is great. Log into this one far out. Okay.
So yeah. What did you just say then about when things go off track? Or shall we try and no? You're gonna log into.
I was gonna try and log into the other one, but it's voice. It's just not happening.
Yeah.
Can we just pause 1 minute? Perfect. Yeah, so life is so busy and we get so caught up in our doing and our to-do lists and what is happening around us that we forget to simply be, and we really forget to be with our children.
Yeah.
So I think, yes, so much choice in our parenting books out there now, and I think we all need to come back to our heart, and we all need to hear what our child is trying to tell us and how they are presenting. And that's what I teach. I teach to understand the communication they're actually having underneath the behaviours they're showing.
Yeah. And would you say, like, what would you say that you see amongst all of your clients? What would you say that you see the most, and that what are children actually trying to communicate with us?
They need to be heard.
Yeah.
And I teach this beautiful tool around compassionate active listening, and I'd be keen to share that today with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to hear it.
And if you want, I can dive straight into that now.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah, perfect. So when we are practicing active compassionate listening, we follow 4 steps to it, or there's 4 different parts to it. So the first one is that we listen intently.
Yeah.
So this is putting our phone down. It's stopping what we're actually in the middle of doing, even if in our mind, on our agenda, it's super important. Our child, what they have to say is incredibly important. And so we put that aside just for that moment. We put our ego aside and we listen intently.
Yes.
And we do this even if we're not necessarily interested in what they're telling us.
Yeah.
We still show them that we are hearing them.
Yeah.
The second part to it is that we listen without interrupting. And this is so hard for all of us to do.
Yeah.
Because
I'm going to put my hand up and I'm going to say that that's difficult because, you know, when I'm listening to my teenager, sometimes I'm like, it's really uncomfortable to hear some things. And I think that that's when I find myself interrupting or starting to mentor him. And actually he shuts down. Like, you know, it's like, right. Yeah. So I love that. Listen without interrupting. I'm going to put these on my fridge. Yeah.
100%. And this one is super challenging because you're right. Something will come up. They'll say something and we'll be like, oh, I have a remedy for that.
Yeah.
Or, that reminds me of this thing. And so without interrupting, I teach my clients, put your tongue behind your teeth and hold it there while they're talking. Yep.
Yeah.
And like literally it stops you in your tracks. You you pause, you truly hear them. They open up so much more. It gets deeper and deeper and you hear things you wouldn't normally have heard from them.
Now, do you think, Kylie, that people like when people become uncomfortable with what they're hearing, it triggers us, isn't it?
Yes.
So this is something that I work with my clients, and I'm not so much focused on people and their kids, but you know, I believe that children are a sacred reflection of often stuff that we haven't integrated ourselves. So that often, you know, they're often showing us parts of ourselves that we still haven't actually gone back to and you know, and actually sat with our own hearts and been compassionate about that part of us. So do you think that a lot of the time we interrupt with that discomfort of being able to actually be with that part of ourselves?
100%. They are our best mirrors.
Yeah.
We absolutely, that's the work I do, is helping you understand why this behavior triggers you so much.
Yeah, brilliant.
What is it about me that I need to work through?
Yes.
To better support them.
Sorry, I'm just like interrupting, but I'm not practicing listening without interrupting. But I get so passionate and excited about this because when you said that about the mirror, like that is just so profound, isn't it? Because people want to think that their children are not a mirror of their own stuff, because that's really hard as well to accept.
Oh, definitely. And I came into this work because I didn't understand. I had a lot of shame and blame and self-blame, and then a lot of guilt around how 2 out of my 3 children were showing up in the world.
Yeah.
And I was like, what am I doing so wrong that means they're behaving like this?
Yeah, and that guilt thing, thing for parents, and guilt and shame, like how to lock something in more deeply, like Brene Brown work, all the work around vulnerability and sharing, like how to lock it in. And I don't think there's any area of life that I see people more ashamed of than parenting, because everyone wants to be seen as like this perfect little happy family and the kids are great and they're doing really well. And because like you said, we often feel it's a sacred reflection of ourselves.
Yeah, 100%. And it's not unicorns and rainbows.
No.
At all. That's not what parenting is ever meant to be.
No.
And we all have struggles. And that is totally okay.
Yes.
And own that and work through it and support them to work through it as well. The more we can role model how we're working through our own stuff.
Yeah. Being like authentic and real, and actually letting them know that mummy has emotions and doesn't always feel fantastic, and it's fine to feel that as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. And daddy too.
Yeah.
Super important that daddy.
Yeah.
talk
God,
about
yeah. Daddies cry as well. Yeah. Especially for boys,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah. And I do not have to be a man at 5 years old. I do not have to stand up and be strong and hold it together.
Oh my God, a little piece of me dies every time I hear someone say, I didn't cry though, like a little kid goes, oh, I didn't cry though, even though it was sore when, you know, whatever it is, I got my ears pierced, or I didn't cry when I was hurt. I'm like, that's a really normal and natural reaction to want to cry. Like, there's nothing wrong with crying.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is all part of holding space for somebody. And this tool that I'm currently teaching, the compassionate active listening, helps you really hold space for a child.
Yes.
And so that is that listening intently, listening without interrupting. And then there's also refraining from judgment. And it's shown on our face, it's heard in our tone of voice. It's a completely unconscious thing that we do. We don't even recognize it. And
it's the eye rolls or the
100%.
Yeah.
Or the sigh, or the here we go again, you know?
Yeah.
And we don't recognize we're doing it. And so I just ask parents to become incredibly aware of how they're listening to their children.
Yes.
And the minute you become aware of it, you cannot unsee it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these are great tools for a relationship as well, aren't they?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
yeah. So this works for colleagues, it works for partnerships, it works for friendships. It's amazing how this opens up a lot. And then the final, sorry.
No, you keep going. Yep.
Okay, the final step is that we refrain from comparing ourselves to them or their situation. And this is super, super hard because, again, we come in with fix-it mode. This is what we love to do, particularly as a mama.
Yes, Mama Bear. Yeah.
Mama Bear comes in, I want to fix it, I want to help you. And my way of doing this is becoming a comrade with you and saying, oh, yes, I've been there. This is what happened for me. This is what I did. Here's what you can do. But what happens when we do that is we take away from their experience of it.
Yes. Yeah.
We're taking away a little bit of what they're feeling and what they're experiencing. So what we need to do is really practice that tongue behind our teeth thing again. Mm-hmm. And we really need to, it's fine to say, I hear you.
Yeah.
I've had a similar situation, but we don't need to go further than that unless we're invited.
Beautiful. I love that. Unless we're actually invited.
And they will invite us at certain points. They really do. And as we practice this more and more, the inviting happens more and more. And they really hear us back. But the only way your child will hear you is if you are hearing them.
I just want to sit with that for a second. The only way a child will ever hear you is if you are hearing them. Yeah. That's massive, isn't it?
Yeah, it's huge.
The only way a child will ever hear you is if you are hearing them. And you can tell when a child turns off. Like I can tell when my son, he ain't listening anymore. He might be sitting there, but his eyes are glazed over. He is, he's gone. He's left the building because he knows that I'm going into sermon mode.
Totally. And we're so good at talking, women in particular. We're like, like we just throw in 59 words more than is even needed. And
I'm hearing, like, as I'm listening to this, I'm like, I love this. This is great. But I'm hearing the voice of 1,000 mama bears going, and daddy bears going, oh my God, this is great, but this feels too hard, or I don't know how to do this. And I know that a lot of the work that you do is particularly with neurodiverse children and people with learning differences, and the mothers and the fathers are often, they haven't slept, they're in a right state. Perhaps when they find you, they're actually like often at their wits end. And what would you say, like, how do you actually help people move from something that can seem so completely far to kind of get to?
Mhm. Yes, yeah. So it's like that duck, paddling like mad underneath the water and seemingly calm on top is such a,
Yeah.
an appearance of, I've got this, it's okay. It's a bit of a martyr syndrome. Well, I have to do it anyway, and I just get through every day. So what I do a lot of work around is just small, tiny little incremental steps towards connecting with your child,
Yeah.
towards understanding what it is that's going on for them. And so I really teach how to become a detective.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I talk about the iceberg a lot. So and I do a lot of visuals around this for people. I've got one for teachers, I've got one for parents, I've got one about the child's behavior.
Yeah.
And it is around the behavior you're seeing is just the very tip of the iceberg.
Yes.
What is actually going on for them is a million things underneath there. And I teach how to find out what need it is that has not been met
Yeah.
for whatever reason, that we can meet, and then behavior shifts from that.
Yeah. So speaking from your own personal experience, if you are comfortable speaking with that, how has this helped you in your own family?
Oh my goodness. So even this compassionate active listening hugely changed my relationship with my husband. On the same page.
I'm getting little shivers and tingles when you say that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like we're on the same page now around what's happening and how to sort of deal with a lot of the challenging moments that we have.
Yeah.
Now we have 3 children, 2 of which are neurodiverse. So our son is autistic, he's 11. One of our daughters, who's 9, has dyslexia, high sensory and auditory processing needs.
Yeah.
So she has a slight delay in how she processes what is being said to her.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can be up to 20 seconds. So we very much had to practice this listening technique so incredibly well with her.
Wow, that must be such an exercise in patience.
Oh, it really is.
And 20 seconds, like my mind's on to the next thing. You're often 3 steps ahead as a parent, aren't you? Trying to get out the door or whatever.
100%. And we've learned to factor in extra time in our day to even get out of the door. Lots of reminders, lots of visual cues, lots of verbal reminders as well. But we try to reduce the amount of words we're using and just make it clear. Very clear instructions, one at a time for her.
Yeah. And so how has their behavior changed with using this compassionate active listening?
Yeah, so they hear me, they hear us,
right?
They hear each other. They very much the kindness has come back into the home. There's a much calmer atmosphere. There's not as much chaos.
Yeah.
I felt like I was running from thing to thing. It was like herding cats.
Yeah.
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 And I now feel like actually there's a sense of togetherness now. And it's a much nicer way of being. Now, don't get me wrong, we're human. So it can be chaotic at moments.
Yeah, but you've got tools, right? So you've got a whole thing of tools that you can kind of come back to in those moments of crisis. And like anyone, you have your moments where it all probably goes pear-shaped and you forget all your compassionate listening or whatever, but you come back to that a lot quicker perhaps than in the past. And I imagine that's what your clients do as well.
Absolutely. And I create an entire toolkit for clients that's individualized to their family.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I was going to say one size doesn't fit all, does it? Every single person is different. Yeah.
That's right. And they can pull from that what they're needing. Some of it may not resonate, in which case we then pick something else out of the toolkit and give that a whirl. And
I love that. So it has to feel authentic for the parent as well.
100%. Yeah. Otherwise they won't do the work and it becomes harder and it means one more thing to add to the day. Whereas I'm all about reducing what has to be done. Let's come back to basics. Let's come back always to connection.
Yeah, I like what you've said about small, tiny, little incremental steps. You know, and I think what I've seen with, you know, I've heard about Kylie helping people within the superstars group, even with parenting, and you know, and I think what I've heard the feedback is that it's like, oh, Kylie gave me one tip and I implemented that, and actually it really helped. You know, and it's like, that's amazing, because I feel like when you're under pressure anyway, if you have a whole list of things to do, like you say, that just becomes like, oh God, this is just too much, I'm never going to do anything. So I love that you've broken it down into bite-sized chunks.
Yeah. Well, we all get that sense of overwhelm at times.
Yeah.
And if you're given too many options,
Yes. Yeah.
or too much to try and do, then
Yes.
we'll do nothing. And
Yeah.
then how is that helping?
Yeah. So how hard was it for you with, you know, the shame that you've talked about? And I know that a lot of people listening to this, they're going to be like, oh God, I've got some stuff going on with my child, and, you know, I feel like I've failed, or like I'm not doing the best that I can, but you know, I have this shame and this guilt, so I'm just kind of going to continue on. Like, what do you find when people first of all come to you? Is that guilt and shame quite a big barrier to them actually accessing and asking for help?
Oh yeah, so it's so courageous to put your hand up and say, I am struggling here, I am in pain, and I need help.
Yeah.
And especially, I think, for parents with neurodiverse kids, because like I say, they don't understand what's happening.
Right.
And they can't imagine why, when they are gentle, loving, kind people, why they have a child who maybe they show up in violence, maybe they throw things around the room, maybe they lash out at their siblings. There's a whole array of things that might be happening for them. But they can't understand why this child is presenting like this when they themselves are, you know, fairly calm, fairly chill people. And so people come to me when they feel like, I know that you will walk beside me without any judgment. I know you get it. And I know you live it day in and day out.
That's just what I was going to say. It's like, it's not like you're this parenting guru who's sitting there in a little castle going, you know, do that, but, you know, you're actually like, you're actually in the fire of it yourself, and you're daily doing the practice. And and I think that's what makes you so accessible and so warm, is that you know, you have that real gentleness, and I feel like people would be really open to you because you're not telling them what to do. Like you say, you're walking beside them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really drum that message home, because I would hate to ever be thought of as a guru.
Yeah, or I'd hate to be that you're telling someone what to do. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely, because we are all walking this journey, and we all have lessons to learn, and our children teach us every single day how we're meant to be showing up in the world.
So how important do you think the role of the mother is? And maybe that's really sexist, me saying that, but mother bear, or, you know, the main kind of carer, like in terms of your own self-care, if it's the dad, whatever, but how much of a difference does how you feel impact your whole family?
Oh, my biggest lesson in life has been that I cannot give to my family at all unless I have given to myself first. And
Hallelujah.
And it was a very hard lesson to learn, and it included some burnout, and it included more shame. And it was beautiful once I was shown how, and I now really focus on implementing this in every session I have with a couple, and it doesn't, or a parent, it doesn't matter whether they're male or female. This essential taking care of yourself.
And it's, you know, it's really interesting. I was listening to a Oprah Winfrey talk, I think it was on Goop, and she said that it was back in like 1999 on the Oprah show, and she asked this bunch of women in her studio, you know, they were talking about self-care, and they were saying, you know, you need to put yourself the top of the list. And the whole studio booed. They booed at her. And they were like, no, the children should come first. This is in 1999. You know, the children should come first. And no, a mother's role is to look after the family. And this is, you know, the first kind of generation, I believe, like, it was certainly for me, you know, and a lot of my friends, our mothers were very much about us kids all the time. And there wasn't a lot of self-care that was sort of promoted for parents in general. You know, dad was working and mum was looking after the kids a lot of the time. And I love that this is a conversation that's opening up, because it's that real reparenting, isn't it? And that real remothering of ourselves, so that we can actually mother and hold space for other people.
Absolutely. And there is nothing quite like being compassionate towards yourself and reparenting yourself, because you just really feel safe and you're able to be authentic. And it opens up so many possibilities in your world when you're able to really hold compassion for yourself and have that self-love. Yeah. And it's simple things too. Like, for example, there are days when I can't leave because I homeschool our son, and he is just not keen at all to leave the house on a bad day. Wow. And it's simple things like, I just, no matter what the weather's doing, I always get outside into nature. That is my thing I have to do. I know this. Yes. Getting fresh air, being in nature in some way. So I'll just sit in our garden or grab a drink and just go and stand by trees or something like that. Yeah. And I feel it, and it can just be 2 minutes. Yeah. And then I get that sense of come back, that sense of being able to breathe again. Yeah. And
yeah, because we've all had those moments when we're really triggered. And I can't imagine, like, I seriously cannot imagine what it would be like to be homeschooling a child at home all the time, you know. That's full on. And yeah, I mean, I love that you've given that, just that little example of just even 2 minutes of time to yourself, because yeah, that's intense parenting.
Yeah, because we always think, you know, we've got it the hardest, but there's always a story out there of someone who's going through a big struggle, and yet they face adversity and they get up and they carry on, and it's small little things that help them to do that.
I remember saying that to a friend whose daughter was sick, but also had, you know, multiple learning and behavioural issues, and I said, God, you're so amazing. And she said, no, I'm not. It's just that there's no other choice.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I was like, truth. So tell us about a story of someone that you've helped that you know, it's really impacted their life, their relationship, their family, by utilising some of these tools.
Yeah, okay. So I had a couple who were really not connecting as a couple with their children.
Yeah.
And they, as we worked through my program, because I offer a 10 session program, as well as just one-off sessions here and there if people have things going on. But they worked through my entire program.
And is that a live program, or is that, do they do it themselves, or?
Yeah, so what happens is I have calls via Zoom.
Yes.
And normally with better internet connection. And we then they have access to an online portal where they sign into that, and they listen to audios and watch a couple of videos and do some reading and writing material. Changes week by week. Yes. And so they're doing really deep inner work as they go through it, and then we'll catch up for a coaching call, and I'll talk them through what's happening with their children, and we look at strategies, and we dive deeper into the content as well.
Okay.
Yeah. But for this couple, they realised as they were working through it that actually their kids were just perfect in being just children, and that it was them as a couple that really needed some work. And so as I helped reparent them and reconnect them to each other, their children then of course flourished, and they just said their family, by the end of it, it was just such a beautiful, calm environment that they were in. They enjoyed each other's company again. They weren't resentful of each other or nitpicking. They
Wow.
came together, and they just such joy and love again. Yeah.
That is massive. That is massive, because I think parenting is really challenging on a relationship, and especially parenting children with, neurodiverse and learning differences. I mean, that's even more challenging, or children with illnesses, etc. And I think, it's such a shame when relationships break down under the stress of it, but I can totally understand why they do. And it's fantastic that you can really help them with that, and that they were able to see that it wasn't actually about the kids. The kids were probably just reflecting their stuff.
Yeah, 100%. And it came down to really empathizing with each other and seeing it from each other's point of view.
Yeah.
And perception is an incredible thing, right?
It's everything. Yeah.
Yeah, because, and we put in our own judgments on something, or we compare ourselves in a situation, and we think, I totally know what this is like, but actually we have no clue. So we need to hear what the other person is experiencing.
Yeah. We need to be in the discomfort of hearing another at a real heart level, and be open to actually hearing someone, even if what they say we don't actually like.
100%.
Yeah.
And that was another beautiful example too, actually, as I had like a family, the male was incredibly analytical and very much in his head.
Yes.
And by the end of our time together, he really had learned how to come into his heart space.
Wow.
And really like show emotion, talk about emotion, feelings, honor the fact that his kids had things, happening for them, and really see it from their perspective as well, instead of constantly being in the head and trying to analyze and come up with a solution. And
because there can be a definite grief cycle that parents go through as well, when you're dealing with kids that are showing up in the world in a different way, would you say?
Oh, absolutely. And with some kids, it's quite obvious. People can see that there's something a little bit quirky or different happening. And with others, like with our son, to look at him, you'd have no clue that he's really challenged in his tolerance with others. Until something goes a little bit haywire, and then you certainly know. But in some cases, it's when you can't physically see that it's hidden. It's a hidden disability, they call it, although I don't really like the word disability, because I think every human is amazing and brings such a gift to this world. I think
I love that you say that, and I think when we were talking about teenagers even last week, you said, and I believe it's true as well, is that teenagers have a lot to teach us.
Yes.
I mean, children in general have a lot to teach us, but at every stage, because we're always being reflected by their very presence. But I also loved that you said that, because there's so much social stereotyping about teenagers are difficult, teenagers are this, they're a challenge, blah 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 blah. And I've really tried to not buy into that with my son being a teenager, because I think that those are sort of cultural portals that are easy to just become a part of. It's a collective unconsciousness, and we can really, we really need to relearn ways to parent and actually look at things differently.
Oh, absolutely. And I know I was blessed in my teenage years to have an incredible relationship with my mum, where I could talk to her about anything at all.
Yes.
And I just remember coming home from parties and sitting on the end of her bed and just chatting with her, and she would just, with no judgment, hear me, listen. And not everyone has that experience. I absolutely understand that, but that did not start in teenage years. She really put the work in when we were little to have that connected relationship. And and so
what would happen if you did something that was naughty?
Yeah, and I did. I certainly did. Yeah, she would. So I wasn't grounded or punished.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
She would literally hear my side of the story.
Yeah,
Sit with me, figure out a solution. I always had to, um, like repair what had happened with whoever it might be,
there was
or
some
what.
sort of completely lost the word. Some sort of cause and effect.
Yeah, there was always a cause and effect. Yeah, and you know, and I remember staying out till like 3 a.m. at about 16 or something, and they were frantic. They had no clue what was happening, and I just remember the fact that she was disappointed in me was worse than anything that could have happened, and nothing did happen because she had instilled in me respect and open communication, and I had broken that, and I felt grateful. I
actually remember saying, I think I was 13 or 14, and I remember saying to a friend, I wish I didn't love my parents so much. I could be naughtier. You know, it's like, oh, then I could just be crazy and do whatever I wanted. But yeah, it was their love that kept me from probably doing a lot of stuff. So
totally.
Yeah.
And then in saying that too, though, I do understand that there is such disrepair in a lot of families and a lot of relationships, and I had that with my paternal grandfather. He was not a particularly kind man, and I know what that pain can feel like as well. So equally, I know, you know, both sides of what that can be like. Yeah,
and life has prepared you perfectly.
For
being a mentor for parents and teachers and actually helping people, because you've had the perfect fodder for experiencing all of the contrasts.
Absolutely. All these lessons always have a reason, right?
Yeah. So what is it like? You work with parents and you work with teachers. Is the work different? Is it the same? What are you kind of offering? Tell us more about that.
Sure. So when I'm working with parents, it's very much around reparenting, as you say. So it's gaining a connection with and understanding your child better. When I'm working with teachers, I'm understanding that there's, you know, up to 28 children in a classroom. There's a lot of diversity that happens there. It's adapting. It's very much around a teacher's well-being.
Okay.
Very much around small little incremental mindful practices that keep you in a heart space, particularly in challenging moments in a classroom.
Wow.
It's how to bring...
Can you give us an example of that?
Yeah, sure. So like as in the small mindfulness
for
practices.
A teacher.
Yeah, sure. So as simple as each time before you enter the classroom, taking a really deep breath in, holding, and then releasing again. And if you can do that 4 times, if you've got the time to do it, otherwise just even one, bring you back into your body so that you are able to then take on other people's energy, because there's a lot happening in a classroom.
I don't know how any person does that. My husband is a teacher, and I'm always like, people often say to me, are you a teacher? And I'm like, whoa, I'm an empath, man. 28 people in close space for 6 hours a day? Are you crazy? I don't think so.
It takes a special human to do it, that's for sure.
That is, you know, that is honestly like, those are God's angels.
They sure are.
God's angels, man.
And they're undervalued, and I think that's a very important point to put across actually, is when you are parenting a neurodiverse child, it is challenging to have a great relationship with a school. That's probably the biggest challenge we come across.
And I've heard that very much as well. It's really frustrating, because
it is.
They're dealing with the middle kid. They're dealing with so many children. Our education system is a bit.
It's very archaic. Needs a good shake up. But we deal with what we have, right? And so, and we find what our child needs as the best we can. So the reason I wrote my program for teachers was because I was really challenged with what was happening for our son in particular, and I saw that I really needed to be the person to repair a relationship with the teacher and kind of be a conduit for and an advocate for him.
Yeah.
And so then, and I love the work I do with teachers. I've worked with a couple of principals, and it's beautiful watching that filter down through a school.
So what would you go in and specifically run workshops with the teachers, or do you work more one-on-one with teachers who actually want help themselves?
Yeah, I do both. So I have an online program for teachers, similar in the sense to my parent program, where it's on a platform. They log into it, they do some content, and then we catch up on a coaching call once a week. And I do this either one-on-one or a group of 5 teachers. And it's really nice having a group of teachers in there. So far they've been from the same school, so they understand the system of that school, and they have a beautiful space to be able to share openly, and I build a sense of trust in that very initial call so that they feel okay to share some of the deepest, darkest parts of themselves, or the stuff that's happening in their classroom.
Because I think it's certainly this time that we're living in. I mean, there is just such a much greater diverse range of children, and I believe that they're here for a very special reason, but they don't really fit into our established archaic education system. So it is challenging, and I think it can be really heartbreaking for teachers, especially if they're really heart-centered, to see children who are really struggling. But like you say, it's also really heartbreaking for parents, because you're having to be that advocate. And I can imagine that, making the decision, your husband and you making the decision to take your boy out of school was massive.
It's huge. And a lot of people said, you're taking the easy road out.
Really? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Which is right. And you should be getting him into formal education. You need to be pushing harder, but we just saw how it was destroying his soul, and he was becoming a very different human to the boy we love. And we knew we had to make a change. So
how different is his? How long has he been out of school for?
We're coming up almost 3 years now. And that's with the move in between. We moved cities, so that was a big thing to navigate through with them. They did so exceptionally well with that. And so, coming up to 3 years. Yeah.
And what's the change been like for him? So that's when he was 8, he came out.
Yeah. So he went from being very angry 99% of the time to like the kind of the ups. I mean, we still have moments where there's huge anger, which is just that's what happens with autism. But we now have really great ways of being able to support him with that, and the environment around him is much calmer. There's not as many people, and we still have connected relationships with people that we keep up for him, so he has a side. But it's he's a much happier human.
So what would you say to a parent who's struggling at the moment, who's just feeling really overwhelmed, they're feeling really stressed out? What would be your sort of like your one pearl that you would give to them? I know it's different for every single person, but if there was one thing that you could say to the world about parenting, what would it be?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a tricky one. Thanks, the big pop. So really very much take care of your needs. It's super important, because the minute you start to feel resentful towards another, or you're starting to yell, or you're slamming the cupboard doors, or you're whatever your go-to acting out way is, that means your needs have not been met, and you're not showing up in your best light for them. And they feel that energy, they know, and then that becomes a cycle of you can't. That's where chaos is and begins and grows. And
How much resistance do you find with people when you say that that's the first thing, you know, or if you say like you've got to have a self-care kind of?
Yeah, there's particularly women, you know, that's selfish to do that.
Yeah, it's still ingrained in us.
It is.
Yeah,
it very much is from society. Yeah.
Mm.
And I was there. I totally was. I wouldn't even get my hair done, or you know, like
spend any money on yourself. Like
nothing.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, and sometimes even having a shower was like, I don't know if I can jump in the shower because that, you know, 5 minutes that it will take me, the world's going to end in my living room with my children. That's very much a common thing with children who are neurodiverse, is being able to
fear, isn't it?
Mitigate,
having to protect your other children as well half the time. Yeah,
absolutely. And so it's like, it's just there has to be really small, just start somewhere. And there's this beautiful saying, you know, like, it doesn't matter if you can't see all of the staircase, just take the first step. And the first step, for my suggestion of the first step, would be very much find a mindful practice that works for you, and there's loads of them out there. I do a massive amount of work around this for clients, but even just coming back to the breath is super important.
It's as simple as the breath, but it's as difficult as the breath.
It is as difficult. And it's you know, it's a free resource. It's there 24/7, and it's totally underutilized. And if we can just take a deep breath in and then release, it just makes such a difference to our day. And it does sound a bit woo-woo for some people. They're like, it can't be that simple.
The ego doesn't like things that are simple. I feel.
Totally.
Like to complicate things and make things really, really tricky. But yeah, I mean, I've learned lots of different meditation things ever since I was about 18. And you know, the funny thing is that all of the money that I spent on all of these transcendental meditation and the mantras that I was given and all of this sort of stuff, it's like, you know, my big thing as well is just keep it simple and keep it with the breath, because like you say, it's always there. It's never going to leave you. You've always got access to it. And I loved what you said about, you know, even 4 breaths, 4 deep inhalations before you step into a classroom, or in that moment where your kid's triggering you, just to remember.
Breathe.
It's
the first thing that goes when we fall to overwhelm.
That's fascinating, because cats, like, and dogs, they breathe, you know, more oxygenate, but we do that too, don't they? They actually
Yeah. And I do this really, I have this workshop about what happens for a child when they go into overwhelm, because it's huge. Their body really reacts in huge ways, and it's often different to how you would think it would be. So
okay. Well, I think that you are so required in this day and age. There's just so many people that I know are out there and they're struggling, and they don't feel like they're getting the resources. They, you know, maybe they've tried medication, it hasn't helped, or they don't feel supported even with that. And, you know, the schools, perhaps they can't, because they don't actually have the resources themselves or the knowledge themselves. So, you know, I know that there's so many people, and I believe that until we really understand our children, I mean, that's our future, and that's the future of this world. So that's where it all begins. And I'm just so, like, really, really, really deeply in awe of the work that you're doing, because I know that it's so big. I don't know if I can bring you back onto camera just for a little bit while we just finish up. It might make the connection fuzzy, but just so people can see your beautiful face again. There she is. She's not frozen in time.
And I just realised my picture's quite different on the thing.
Because you had your longer hair, where you shaved for a cure with your son.
That's right. Yeah.
So are there any, whoops, I just did a card and threw it. Is there anything else that you want to share as we just come to the end here?
No, I'm super thankful for you and the community that you've created, because it's a beautiful a beautiful way of being held by each other as we work in small biz.
Yeah.
Yeah. But really just that I walk beside you through the parenting journey, guys, because it isn't easy, and it's not meant to, life isn't meant to be easy. We have some beautiful lessons along the way. And I do so with empathy and compassion and very much no judgment, because I hear a lot of stuff, and I just hold you in love as your journey.
Yeah, and I think that that's the biggest thing, is that, and I know this because I've seen you interacting with other people, and I've seen how you are actually able to offer advice to people in a way that they will actually receive it. And I think that that's a real art form, because it's really hard to receive advice sometimes, or tips and tools, and I can see that you do absolutely do it from that standpoint of, I'm not above you, we're walking this together, and I just want to hold you and love you and help you. So thank you so much for the way that you're showing up in the world, Kylie. We love you and we're grateful for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.